introduction marks, like, you know.
Thank you all for coming. This is fantastic. This is great, and I hope that most of you had a chance to come by the center earlier today. We had a great time there. Everybody got to tour the labs and stuff like that. But thank you all for being here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dave Messenger. I'm the current director of the Chester F. Carlson Center for Imaging Science, and we're all here today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of both the opening of the Carlson building and the New York State approval of the first ever PhD program at RIT. So a couple of points of business. First of all, I'd like to thank our sign language interpreters for helping out tonight. Very nice. You will have received a dinner ticket on the back of your ticket, and if you take that out and put that in front of your plate, that will help the servers as they bring around dinner. Over the course of the evening, there will be some short remarks from a bunch of past and current members of the RIT administration, as well as during dinner, Dr. John Schott will give a short presentation on the history of the center that's based on the book that he just published. Before we begin dinner, let me introduce some attendees of particular importance to the history of and the present state of the Center for Imaging Science. As I call your name, please stand, but don't hold your applause until we finish with each particular group. From the past RIT administration, I'd like to welcome Dr. Al Simone. Al will be giving some remarks later on. Dr. Simone was president of RIT from 1992 to 2007 and oversaw the expansive growth of research at RIT.
Yeah!
Trustee Emeritus, Mr. Bob Kohler is here tonight. Bob is also an RIT Distinguished Alumni. Bob was appointed to the CIS Advisory Board, I think in 1985, and then he became a member of the RIT Board of Trustees in 1988. Bob was instrumental in developing the plan for the center and the first PhD program at RIT in imaging science, as well as the overall growth of research at RIT. Thank you, Bob. From the current RIT administration, we have Trustee Mr. Jeff Harris, who is also an RIT Distinguished Alumni. Mr. Len Parker, who is a member of the President's Roundtable, back in the corner, I think. Steve Schultz, I'm not sure if Steve is here today. Steve is also a member of the President's Roundtable. Provost and Senior Vice President Ellen Grandberg is here with us. Vice President for Government and Community Relations, Ms. Debbie Stendardi is here. Associate Provost and Vice President for Research, Dr. Ryan Raffaelli as well. And of course, my boss, the Dean of the College of Science, Sophia Megalakis, who will also We have a handful of past directors of the Center for Imaging Science. Bob Desmond is here someplace. Bob, there he is all the way back. Along with Ed Kurtvilowitz, who is also a director of the center. And with us also are two faculty members in the center who served as interim directors, Harvey Rohde, and of course John Schott, who served as interim director. We also have several College of Science Distinguished Alumni with us today. Puru Purushotham, who is also a member of the President's Roundtable, is here. Mr. Ricardo Mata, Mr. John Roberts, and Dr. Bob Losey, who was the first ever PhD in anything from RIT. I also want to take this time to point out Dr. Karen Braun. I don't know where Karen is. Karen's in the back there. Karen was the first female PhD from RIT. And we're also lucky because Dr. Maria Helguera, who was female PhD number 2, is here as well. For those of you that don't know, Karen recently rejoined the center. Joe Howe, who has been serving as the associate director for probably close to 20 years, recently retired, and Karen stepped in to fill his very large shoes, so we're very welcome to both of them. There are lots of other very special people here, and I know you all had a chance to chat with each other, but before we start with dinner, I'd like to ask Dean Megalakis to come up and give some brief remarks.
Science. I extend a warm welcome to all of you. We're extremely pleased to have you here this evening. I'm very honored to share this evening with all of you and just to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Chester F. Carlson Center for Imaging Science. It's delighted to see so many of you making this visit to come and be part of this important milestone. As you know, the Chester F. Carlson Center for Imaging Science had many successes and continues to have many successes. Our faculty, our staff, our research scientists, our students, our postdocs are conducting world-class research that is nationally and internationally recognized. So the College of Science and RIT are very proud of these successes, and we consider the center to be one of the jewels of RIT. Many of you had an important role in contributing to these successes, and we are extremely thankful for your dedication to RIT. We are thankful to many of you who serve on our advisory boards, those of you who are giving us advice and promoting our programs. You're giving us wise advice about our curricula, how to offer up-to-date curricula, and also helping us to strengthen our partnerships with industry, providing opportunities to our students through internships, but also full-time jobs. So we're immensely grateful for this dedication to RIT. As Dean, I had the pleasure to meet many of you, and I'm continuously inspired and impressed with all your accomplishments, but also your dedication to RIT and your support. So I hope you had the chance, the few hours you were with us this weekend, to interact with our faculty, staff, and students, so you can see what we have become today, and I hope to be able to see you again, and I'd like to invite you to come back for more in the future. So I hope we can see you soon. Now it is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Albert Simon. As you heard, Dr. Simon served as RIT's 8th president for 15 years, from 1992 to 2007. And during his leadership, RIT saw a tremendous growth and transformed to a real university. He helped us develop a number of very unique, niche, and interdisciplinary programs, among which are more PhD programs in addition to the first PhD program in imaging science. So we initiated PhD programs in the areas of microsystems engineering, astrophysical sciences and technology, color science, computing and information science, and sustainability. He reminded us every day that we are here for the students, by the faculty, with the support of our staff. And he emphasized the importance of shared governance, and we did use shared governance to accomplish all these successes. So we're very thankful to Dr. Simon. He also worked very hard to help us build a research agenda in various important areas, and to help us through opportunistic hires and investment in strategic and opportunistic hires to increase the diversity of our faculty and staff, but also to build a research agenda, and also to build a number of research centers that are still successful until today. He also initiated many research programs that we are building on, and we are continue to be successful. Dr. Simon continues to be an enthusiastic supporter of RIT and a great mentor to all of us, and we're very thankful for that. So please join me in introducing Dr. Simon.
Thank you, Sophia, for, I guess that's the best introduction I've ever had. A lot of lies, but, you know, that seems to be the order of things these days, so. But, you know, that's said good faith. My wife's given me the, well, look, let me begin here. There are, as I look back on my time here, and I look back on RIT in general, I see my way of looking at things, 7 pivot points in the growth and development of RIT. I'm just going to cover them quickly, and then the 7th one, of course, is the Center for Imaging Science. 1829, we had the Rochester Athenaeum established. And that was just a group, a community group that brought in distinguished philosophers and scholars from all over the country and the world to Rochester. All Emerson, for example, was one of those people. Community kind of an organization, academically oriented discussion groups. Then in as a pivot point for RIT's development, 1885, the Mechanics Institute was established, and that was based on the work of the CEOs and leading executives in Bausch & Lomb, Kodak, and Xerox. They needed to develop a workforce for their companies, and they wanted to have people go through an education program, particularly in photographic arts, and printing, and those kinds of areas. Then in 1891, RAMI was formed, Rochester Athenaeum and Mechanics Institute. They merged the two. So now you had a group that brought in distinguished scholars for the community as a whole, and then you had another group, totally opposite in a sense, which trained people specifically to do a job for the 3 major manufacturing companies in the area. Then in 1912, and this is my 4th pivot point, co-op education was established at RIT. Co-op education. I think that is so important, and I'm a bias in that regard. I spent 3 years teaching at Northeastern University, which is the largest and second oldest co-op institution in the country. I spent 15 years at the University of Cincinnati, which is the oldest and second largest co-op institution in the country. When I went to Hawaii, I introduced the co-op program there. RIT is the 4th oldest and 5th largest co-op education institution. So I really have a love affair for co-op, and that was an attraction for me to see that this kind of a program, partnering with the community, preparing students for jobs, was here at RIT. And I think that was a pivot point. In 1944, RAMI, the name was changed to RIT. So the Rochester Institute of Technology is a very new old university, if you want to look at it that way. You can go back to 1829 if you want for its first group. But then the name came up in 1994. Then in 1965, all this tossed in. NTID, the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, had nothing to do really with what we're talking about tonight, but I see that as a pivot point. The extreme commitment to diversity at a time when that wasn't always the most popular thing, and we were at the forefront of that move as well. Then the next pivot point, the 7th pivot point, 1985, the Center for Imaging Science was established. And I want to talk now, that everything I've said now is really preparation for the center. And you have to go back to Chester Carlson, the founder of xerography, of Xerox, just a tremendous individual, died in the 1960s. He became very wealthy, and as a consequence of that, he became a phenomenal philanthropist, supporting many programs in the area. And because of co-op and the hiring of RIT students from the downtown campus, he knew about RIT and was happy to provide support through his charitable trust to the founding of CIS in 1985. And that support continued. He passed away, his wife Doris came on, and she continued it. When she passed away, their daughter, Catherine Carlson, took over the Carlson Charitable Trust and continued that philanthropy with generosity always towards RIT. And there's an interesting side story there. Catherine was born in Milton, Massachusetts, and grew up there. I grew up in Winchester, Massachusetts. We were neighbors. My wife and I graduated from Tufts University. Carlson was a registrar and development officer at Tufts University. in her 20s and early 30s, and she was coming to Rochester as part of her job as registrar and actively in development. And that's when she met the Carlson. They became fast friends. They became such good friends that they adopted her, and she became their daughter, their legal daughter, in the, she was in flight. And then when Doris passed on, Catherine became the executor of the Carlson Charitable Trust, and she continued her giving. I got to know Catherine well because of the Rochester roots that we shared. We did many things together. I remember one time in particular, we went to Croatia to introduce a program there. It was a graduation for the first class of Croatia. Catherine was on the board of trustees. We went there with Sam McKenzie, provost at that time, my wife, and Mulligan, who was just a close friend at that time of Doris's and Carolee and I. And we were a gang of 5. And we went and we partied and we visited those 3 countries. Came back even closer friends. And Carlson maintained that support for our scholarships, endowments, and other givings as long as she was alive. So that's a little bit about the Carlson Center. I wanted to talk about the name. But really, a name is a name. You have to have a concept to put it on. And the Center for Imaging Science, that was a hard sell. That was hard. It needed tough people. And we had the 3 musketeers. We did. We had Bob Cole. He's about as tough as they come. 1959, photographic science graduate, worked with the CIA. He worked with the Office of Naval Research. Was a trustee. He became a trustee, I think, in 1988. Graduated in 1959 with his degree. He became a trustee, I think, in 1988. He was the first, musketeer. And then you had Rich Rose, my predecessor, president for 10 years. And Rich really pushed the idea of the Center for Imaging Science, really pushed hard. And then the third person, of course, was John Scott. And I had some comments to make about John at the end of my remarks. But a prolific researcher, leader, teacher, innovator, that's John. Those 3, the 3 advocates, the 3 musketeers, how could anybody defeat them, right? And so in 1985, the Center for Imaging Science was established. And when I first came here, as I looked at everything, I looked at NTID and I thought we just started a deaf studies program at the University of Hawaii. Colby Chandler, CEO of Kodak, was chair of the search committee, and Kodak, just remember I was talking to someone today, Kodak sponsored the Hula Bowl in Hawaii. And I knew Colby for like 10 years, he and there was that connection. University of Hawaii had probably the leading institute for astronomy in the country. We had the largest telescope in the country. They're from France, from Great Britain, all over telescopes. And the idea of imaging and what the center was about related. So a lot of things about the center just sort of came home to roost. The interdisciplinary nature of the center, bringing together computing and physics and chemistry and environment, and all imaging, photography, bringing all those together, cutting across the disciplines. I've been a dean for too long and a department head for too long to see all the silo building in academia. Here was a program that was cutting across the interdisciplinary lines. That would be a good model for the rest of any university. So these are the kind of things that I looked at when I first came to RIT, and when I was thinking about coming to RIT, and I saw CIA. Then, of course, you have to have growing pains. You have to have growing pains. And all of a sudden it became, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, it became clear that RIT was doing some work with the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. Well, and that it covered all the papers locally, covered all the papers nationally. Chronicle of Higher Education talked about it. I saw all of that, and I think that discouraged probably a lot of candidates from looking into this job. I loved it. I thought it was great because I had been through the same battle at the University of Hawaii. We shouldn't be doing classified research. That's secret academic freedom. We share everything. And I say you don't share everything. There's certain things you just don't share. Like you want to protect the country. You want to make sure that the enemy doesn't have a leg up on us, that they're not spying on us, or we can't spy back on them. We have to defend ourselves. And you have to do that in a classified way. Companies also developing new technology. They put the research money in so they can get a competitive edge. If you share all that, they can't afford to do that. So if we don't do it for them, they'll get someone else to do it. The government will do it themselves. I'd rather have a university doing it than the government. Why don't we do our part? Why don't we share? That was my position. Okay, that was not a popular position in those years. I mean, the fact that they marched, I was used to that. They protested. They did all that stuff. And so as I talked to Bob this earlier, Bob Cobra, by the way, of all the trustees, I love them all. I love him as much as anyone, probably more than most. We fought more than anybody. We fought all the time. But we did agree on this. We should have just said at the time, we're doing classified work for the CIA. And these are the reasons why. And then we can agree to disagree and move on. Well, that's what we did when we came here. I did that exactly. And we're going to establish a committee with faculty, staff, and students on that committee, and they will know what classified research we're doing, who the sponsor is, what the general amount of money is, what the general topic is, who the principal investigator is, and that's it. They won't know anything else. They won't get any progress reports. They'll know that because this is classified. Now, that's going part way. You didn't have that before. You have that now. Live with it. Okay. So we did that. It was kind of hard those first couple of years. Ryan, you remember you were here then? No. A few of you were here then. You came a little later. Yeah, you missed it. That was kind of tough. But how did it go? 2010, guess who the honorary doctorate degree was given to? Guess who gave the commencement address? It was George Tenet, head of the CIA. We brought him to campus. Okay. Now it still wasn't all quiet. There were some people that didn't want him, so they had their little tent where they could protest, and we had a regular reception tent, but they could not disrupt proceedings, or there would be consequences. And I made clear what the consequences would be. We had a terrific graduation, one of the best universities we ever had. So all I'm trying to say is there were growing pains in the development of the center, and that was one of them. And we got through it, and we were better for it. 1889, the PhD program in imaging science was approved. It was the first PhD program at RIT, the first PhD program in imaging science in the country. Right? It was terrific. Again, growing pains. The faculty said, we're a teaching university, we don't do research. Why do we want to do that? I mean, that's theory. Well, the idea is this. We would make the argument. If you're a teaching university, you have a textbook, which is 2 or 3 years out of date, and you make a syllabus up with a textbook and teach the kids information that's 2 or 3 years out of date. If you're a really good faculty member, you go to the journals and you introduce a couple of articles from the journals into the syllabus. And that's good because maybe that's only 1 year out of date. But if you're doing research, you're teaching your kids, and your kids are working in their labs on knowledge that no one else knows yet. You're advancing the state of knowledge, and you've got an edge because you're doing it. That's why research is important. And so we went through all of that, and we now have 8 PhD programs. Sophia mentioned what they were. Terrific. So I would say that the CIA is Center for Imaging. CIA, Center for Imaging Science, has been a transformational pivot. It's a pivot point, but really a transforming of this university. And the co-op program helped feed it because it gave us access to the companies, which provided the funding, which helped us to do the research. The Cardinal Hard Education this week, you can read it as a front story article from people voting, but they're talking about how academia and business need to work together more, so the students are better prepared to help the companies and the agencies and the government and the institutions they work for than they would otherwise be, and that helps academia as well. And so RIT was ahead of that. We're talking about it now. We did it 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. An example of, Sophia mentioned, the university for students, buying with the faculty and staff and so forth. I thought Steve Schultz would be with us today. I wanted to pick on him. And he was here, he found out I was going to pick on him, he left, he said he had to go. Well, this is an example. I mean, this kid, in high school, a junior achievement. In high school, his company won the Company of the Year award. He was the executive of the year, a star. He could have gone to a lot of universities. RIT gave full scholarships, so he came here instead of Minnesota Polytech or Caltech or some other place he could have gone. But he ran out of money in his junior year, and so he had to get a job, go part-time. So he went to work where? He was at the Center for Imaging Science. He worked there 11 years. And he completed his degree in 1989 in computer science. He was working on his master's degree when I was here. And what was he? He became editor of Reporter magazine. We used to meet for a couple of hours every couple of weeks. He says that he could never get a word in edgewise. I don't understand that. So he was the president of the computer house, the corner crew of the hockey. He was a leader. He was a leader in everything he did. So he's working, but he never completed his PhD though. But he took all that coursework. He knew John's shot, and they worked together. Then there was a guy named John Jump in the College of Photographic Science, and he had a patent, and he didn't know how to develop it technically. So he cornered Steve, and Steve developed the technology which made that patent work. But he didn't know how to develop a product to do that. So they found this guy named Dick Kaplan. I don't know if Dick's not here, I guess. Dick is an entrepreneur. I don't think he has a degree, but he's a terrific guy, serial entrepreneur, multimillionaire. They asked him to come in, would you be the CEO to develop this product? Pictometry was the company, and that's a multi-million-dollar company now. And as a consequence of that student, Steve Schultz, that student, he's done so much. He's contributed so much. He gave $1 million, for example, to the Carlson Center to support his corner crew, I guess. His wife, Vicki, who's not here because he's not here, has 3 degrees from RIT. She worked for RIT. Then she went to U of R. So I don't know. But anyway, he got this perfect. So they have 2 kids. So what I'm getting at is a student, a star in high school, comes to RIT, has difficulty, masters it, leads it, outside of the classroom, inside the classroom, collaborates with an entrepreneur. He came from, poor, he was poor, he couldn't afford his tuition payments. He had to go work, he graduated working part-time, and now he's a multi-millionaire. RIT made that happen through CI. The college has been phenomenal for students like Steve. So what I want to do is I want to finally conclude by saying thank you to some people. I want to say I can miss a whole bunch of names, but I'll just say a few names. But so many could say. When I first came, I want to speak with the directors that I work with. Bob Johnston, 1992, 1994. He was working for years. We were talking about it. He was trying to develop a way to read the Dead Sea Scrolls and Archimedes palimpsests, and he finally did it. He and Roger Easton, Roger's here, they together developed a way to do that through the Center for Imaging Science. Terrific. Then 1944, we had some more growing pains. The center was located in the College of Imaging Arts and Sciences. It wasn't working out there. There were some compatibility problems. We put it out of the provost for a while to figure out what to do with it. And we figured, well, there's some hard cases in that center, but there are harder cases in the College of Science. Let's put it in the College of Science and see if they can survive. And they not only survived, they thrived. Sophia, thank you. So, but to make that happen, we had to have a director. So in 1994, 1996, we got Ed Prisbilovich, who's here tonight. Ed's fantastic. He had a PhD from all of the directors that I to talk about now, they're academics primarily, that's how I started. Ed has a PhD in chemistry from MIT, okay? But then he went to work for Kodak. He worked for Kodak for 30 years? Yeah, 30 years, a long time. He was senior vice president and responsible for research and development. He had 10,000 researchers working for him, developing the proprietary products for Kodak. Ed came on board here, and he provided an industry interface that we needed for the program. Then in 1996-97, Harvey Rody came in on an acting basis, and then we brought in Ian Gatlin. And Ian was here from 1907 to 2003. Again, Ian was in the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii when I was there. So I didn't know Ian then, but I knew about his work. He was terrific. Ron Jovan came in as acting director. And then when Ian left, became dean. And then in 2004, Steffi Baum came in. What a record she has. NASA, publications, she was terrific. And she was here until I left. So I want to say thank you to all those directors. Thank you very much. And I'm almost at the end. I've got two more things. One is the John shot. I mean, John. John was here at the beginning. He came here in 1980 in the School of Photographic Science and Instrumentation in the College of Imaging Arts and Sciences. He came in 1980. And then in 1985, we wanted to form the center, we wanted to do research. And some of the faculty in the center said he was too applied. Some of the faculty outside of the center said he was too theoretical. And some of the people that were in neither of those categories said he relies too much on outside funding, especially from the government. And did John cry? I mean, he might have, but I don't know. He hung in there, he persevered, and he overcame that resistance. He's become a leader. He's published hundreds of articles, reports, books, conference proceedings. He's got over 100. He's advised over 100 masters and PhD students. He's an innovator. He's just been terrific. He's been a giant for CIS. And we ought to hear it for John Schott. I really think so. John. And finally, I got to, I got some cards I haven't looked at them yet, but I just want to say, really, thank you to CIS, College for Imaging Science, for being who you are, for being the guiding light in so many ways over these years for RIT. You've forged a path, and you're projecting one forward. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dean Megalakis and President Simone. During dessert, John will actually get up later and give a brief presentation, like I said, on the history of the center, so we can see the timelines and all the people that were involved. I'll follow up shortly after that with just a couple of charts on the current state of the center for those of you that haven't been back in town for a little while. Now, please enjoy your dinner, and we'll let you know during dessert time when the rest of the program will begin. Thank you very much. While you all are enjoying your dessert and coffee, John Schott, as most of you know, recently published a book through RIT Press on the history of the Center for Imaging Science. So John has graciously agreed to give a brief presentation about the history of the center. And then I'm going to follow up with just a couple of charts on sort of where we're at right now. So most of you, many of you probably know this, but John joined RIT in 1980. And he was one of the instrumental faculty in establishing the center and the Imaging Science degree program and the growth of research at RIT in general. John is an internationally recognized expert in the area of remote sensing systems, and he retired from RIT in 2017, although bizarrely I still have to give him an office.
And bizarrely,
And he does occasionally come in and cause trouble. So anyway, like I said, John has recently published a book on the history of the Center for Imaging Science, and he's graciously agreed to tell us that story tonight. So John, please come on.
Thank you, David. I have to begin by making a pretty important correction to some of the advertising literature that came out for this meeting. My students have called me many things. My colleagues have called me many more, and typically not as nice. But beloved was never amongst them.
About that, and they said, you wrote it.
Every year when our first entering class comes in, we sit them down, sort of an icebreaker, and also because we want to see if there's a thread, we ask the students, how did you find photographic science? How did you find imaging science? And I'm going to use that approach to start the story tonight and take you back to the very early days of photographic science and tell you a little bit about how I found the program, because it introduces some of the characters and some of the nature of the program at the time. I finished my baccalaureate degree and started at a research center in Buffalo, and that funny guy with the long hairs, me before the Fu Manchu act. So I'm working there at Carlson with my baccalaureate degree. I got a little bit of visibility, and I convinced them to send me off to graduate school at Syracuse. So I go to Syracuse, and I'm sitting up in the attic of Bray Hall. Tuesday and Wednesday nights. I was only in Syracuse a couple days. The rest of the time I was still working in Buffalo. And everybody's gone. It's 11 o'clock at night. And I hear this funny music coming down the hallway. So I walk down the very dim, dingy hallways in the attic. And in the next bay down, there's one guy studying. Well, he wasn't studying. He was sitting there playing his banjo. So I go up to meet him, and it turns out it's this fellow, John Roberts. John was like me. He was just a couple years older than the other students. He was working at Rome Development Center. And it turns out John and I knew each other. We'd never met, but his group at Rome sponsored the work that I was doing at Carlson Corporation, so I'd heard of him, he'd heard of me, and we hit it off. We would periodically late at night kick ideas around. And we quickly came to realize that the two of us knew a lot about using cameras as scientific instruments. And they weren't teaching us that at Syracuse. And so we got talking about how do you know this stuff, how do you know that stuff. And I learned it all at what was reputed to be one of the finest research centers in the country, having worked there for a few years. And he learned it as an undergraduate in the photographic science department at RIT. So this was my first introduction to photographic science at RIT. I was living in Buffalo. RIT's 60 miles down the road. I knew RIT existed, but had never heard of photographic science. So I'm commuting back and forth from Syracuse to Buffalo, and I stopped one night to visit my youngest sister, who's a nurse at Strong. And she says, well, let's go to a party. And I said, sure. Single guy, happy to go to a party with a bunch of nurses. But it turns out, Susie takes me to a party with a whole bunch of photoscience people. She's dating a photoscience guy. And I'm sitting at the party and end up sitting next to this scruffy old guy who turns out to be Ron Francis, the chairman of the department. And Ron and I start talking, and he finds out that I'm a remote sensor, that I'm studying for my PhD at Syracuse. And he says, well, you know, our sponsors are really interested in having us do more remote sensing work, and when you finish your degree, we'd really like to talk to you. Well, college party, a few beers, I completely forgot this conversation. A few more years go by. Yeah, a few more years go by, and I get a call from Ron. He has run into my now brother-in-law at a get-together, and Bob tells him John's finished his degree, he's still hanging out at Carlson, and I get a call from Ron saying, we'd like you to come. But I won't go through all the many iterations, but I eventually talked to Dr. Francis, and he tells me about this program. They want to grow it, they'd like to put together a PhD in imaging science, photographic science. And I talked to Russ Krause, who was the head of the photographic school at the time. He says, we really want to do research. We'd like you to come in and start building research. Long story short, I say, okay. And my colleagues at Cornell Aeronautical Labs, later Calspan, throw a big party. I won't go into why they threw a big party. It had very little to do with me. But I happen to be one of the few people who, in the 8 years I was there, left of my own volition. Calspan shrank from 1,600 people to 800 people in those 8 years post-Vietnam. Things were kind of tough. The important part of this is they were really happy to see me go, and they let me take much of my laboratory with me, and that's going to play a role. So I get to and I have to say, this gentleman, when you use that word beloved, it did apply to him. He was the student's champion. He was very well loved by the students. This is a picture of Ron. This is Ron mugging for the mug shots we used to have on the wall in the sensitometry complex. Each student, to check in and check out, you had to check in through your photo, and you had to get a mug shot to get your photo. And this is Ron clowning for the mug shots he wanted everybody to get. Well, I show up, and I don't know what I've gotten myself into. The department didn't do PhD work. They didn't have a PhD. They brought me in to help do that. Okay, so that's okay. Then I found out the whole institute didn't have a PhD program. I was a 28-year-old kid at the time, pretty naive. I hadn't checked that into that. And then I found out not only did we not offer PhD degrees, we didn't have a charter from the state to offer PhD degrees. Well, let's set me back a little bit. Then I found out, well, not only does the photoscience department not do much research, the institute doesn't do much research. They just started the research corporation. They were doing a little bit of contract research, mostly off campus. So I'm sitting there, well, what am I doing here? And then, as you can see from this picture, everybody left. And it might have had something to do with me. But a bunch of these guys have been around for a long time. John Carlson, who I was desperate to come and learn some optics from and do some optics, leaves. And so it's sort of Ron and I, after a year. Well, Ron starts trying to hire some new faculty, and I started doing some research. And we got really lucky, and within that first year, we won a big grant from NASA and a bunch of smaller grants, and we started doing some research. And as you can see here in the red, that encouraged the dean to say, well, we got this research going, it's one of the key components of doctoral studies, let's put together a team to look into a doctoral program in then photographic science. This next step was going to plague us for a while. He says, well, let's get the whole college in on this and form a committee to figure out how we're going to do a degree. And we'll let the printers help, and we'll let the our fine arts photo people and the graphic arts photo people help try to define this program. So we started that, I guess. At the same time, as we're trying to hire these faculty, we got involved with the microelectronics activities. Electrical engineering had been seeing tons and tons of kids, photo science kids, getting hired to support the microelectronics industry because they knew how to put printed circuits down onto photoresist. It's a imaging photochemical process. So they said, well, we're going to take advantage of this. We've got a big electrical engineering undergraduate program. We got these photoscientists. Let's build a program in microelectronics engineering, which got kicked off in 1983, which committed us to teaching half the courses in the microelectronics program. Lynn Fuller headed that, did a fine job. But we're now teaching and trying to staff up not only our own courses, but all the courses to teach all these swarms of microelectronics students. And Micro-E also kicks off a building in 1985. Well, RIT is a small place, and word of this possible PhD program in imaging science starts to spread around campus. And the Dean of Graduate Studies starts a committee to say, should we be doing doctoral level work? An important part of that committee is nobody from photoscience is on the committee. We should have known something was going on. And the committee reports out, and they say, no way. We've got to have every master's program in the sciences at top tier before we even consider a PhD. It's going to form a two-tiered faculty. We're going to have publisher parish all over campus. Goes on and on, a whole bunch of made-up reasons why we shouldn't have a PhD anywhere on campus. Well, this committee that had been chewing around for 2 years at this point quickly pops out their half-baked PhD proposal. The only part of it that's important is they had a point-by-point rebuttal of the issues that the Madu report, the report of the graduate policy comes out with. Well, neither of these things are important except that they got the senior administration's attention, and the senior administration, the provost, forms a committee to say, should we do research? One committee. Should we move to the PhD? Second committee. These are campus-wide committees with the authority of the provost. They're going to have some impact. Well, a few years have gone by, there's a whole new faculty. Here are some of the players listed, but I want to call your attention to the character in the top right. Willem Brouwer came to us in 1983-84. He came to us having started at the Physical Science Research Center at Boston University, which became iTech Corporation. He then formed his own company called Diffraction Limited. In all of these roles, he was designing and then building large optical systems that went on the U-2 aircraft and then the early space reconnaissance aircraft. Very, very impressive gentleman. So he had sort of retired, was doing some consulting, came to us, and he started getting very intrigued with what was going on in imaging science. He was teaching optics for us, commuting back to Boston, where he lived most of his life. And he started saying, we could really do something here. We could form a national center. We could integrate not only photographic science, but the evolving field of electronic imaging, digital imaging, and computer vision. He comes back the next fall, after going home for the summer, 1984-85, and we convinced him to be the chairman of the Department of Photographic Science. Photographic Science and Imaging, then we changed the name. And Willem continues to push this idea along with Russ Krauss. Russ Krauss is the head of the School of Photography that the department was in at the time, and had insights into the senior administration and what might work and what might not, because we were pretty juvenile, right? This whole brand new faculty, director's only been there 2 years, the chairman's only been there 2 years. Luckily, at about this same time, this character named Kohler, who was head of the Office of Development and Engineering at the Central Intelligence Agency, also a photo science graduate, as you heard, knows Kohler, or knows Brower from his time at ITEC and knew his work, starts saying, you know, we'd like to do more work with RIT. We, the CIA, would like to do more work with RIT, particularly in the area of imaging and remote sensing. And Brower, speaking from inside the program, and Kohler, speaking from outside, start to get the Institute's senior management interested in growing this relationship. And they start talking about what was documented in a memorandum of agreement between CIA and RIT about how we should do business in the future. Well, all of this sorts to come to head in calendar year 1985. Very important year for the center and I think for the Institute. In March of '85, the Nystrom Committee reports out, that's the committee of the provost in charge on graduate education, saying, should we be doing graduate education? Really, should we be doing PhD programs? And they come out diametrically opposed to the Medill report. Graduate education is good, we should have a PhD, we should get the charter changed. Everybody knew that about imaging science, because imaging science was going to be the first PhD. And graduate education is good for undergraduates as well, which was one of the big charges. Somehow we're going to destroy undergraduate education by having one PhD with about 10 students in it. April of that year, the Johnston Committee on Encouraging Research comes out, same finding. Research is not only okay, it's good, it will be very good for the Institute. It's kind of hard to imagine that these two flavors of things are happening at the same time, one saying absolutely no, one saying absolutely yes, but it reflects the dichotomy that existed at the Institute in the mid-'80s. People were uncomfortable taking that next step. 1985, in May, Brower finally convinces, after a few tries, the Institute that we should form this Center for Imaging Science. Should be a national center, should focus on research and education. It would be the first center of combined research and education in the Institute. A month later, Brower resigns. He was a kind of cranky coot, one of my favorite people on earth, but could be a little cantankerous. And one of the versions of this memorandum of agreement between the CIA and RIT had the director of the center reporting through a cabal of deans to try and get anything done, and Willem didn't like that. Never happened, by the way, but it was enough to tick Bill off. They asked me to be the director. I bowed out. This is the first time I bowed of many to being the director of the center, and said, you know, you got to do something serious here. I'm a 29-year-old kid, 32-year-old kid, I guess at this point. We need somebody serious, somebody senior, who's going to make this run, and somebody who you're going to respect. Well, luckily for the center, there's this fellow, Bob Desmond, who had been the head of the Research Corporation, president of the Research Corporation. I had worked with him for many years in his role as president of the Research Corporation. We felt some respect. The provost and he got along really well, and they convinced him to take the job for a year, mainly to nurse the center through a year while we found a permanent director. Bob would go on to be dean of the college that we were in, and very helpful in many ways I'll get to in a minute. The provost also kicks out an institute-wide study group to form a proposal for a PhD in imaging science. I won't go into this very much, but again, it's an institute-wide study group. That means every college in the institute is represented trying to put together a PhD in imaging science. Along the way, Debbie had helped us work with Alphonse D'Amato, our senator at the time, to get a proposal in to get some money to finish building the microelectronics building and to help start a building for a physical center for imaging science. So now we're talking, we've just formed a conceptual center with a few faculty, and we're now talking about a building as well. Well, a few years go by and everybody's gone again. Luckily, some of these folks will go back. The color program here, Frank Crum and Roy Burns, simply didn't join the center when we formed the center, but they would be talked into joining us again a couple years later. Bobby Kohler comes into play here again because he left the government, went to work for industry, joined the Board of Trustees in 1988, and he, along with Rich Rose, would start a campaign with the Board of Trustees to move this potential PhD in imaging science forward. There was a big problem at the time because much of the board thought about RIT the way it was in the 60s. There was a program to train the technicians and the employees they needed to run their factories. And here we are talking about a PhD, and that was kind of anathema at the time. Bob Desmond comes in and he says, okay, I'll be the director for the year. I don't want imaging science, so I don't challenge any of the imaging science faculty. But he knew the institute well. He started smoothing the way for this potential PhD to move through the RIT system. And because he knew the program, institute-wide program, was very helpful with that. He also chaired this institute-wide committee that was supposed to put the proposal together. He would become the dean the next year. He was sort of a troubleshooter for the provost of this. First you troubleshoot, he was imaging science, then you troubleshoot, he'd be the dean of their college. And then Bob would leave for a couple years and come back as the associate provost, or junior provost as I called him at the time. Through all of this, he would help us fight the battles to raise the money, particularly in his role as the dean and then as provost, to fill the faculty. So here we are, this little program. We got no people again here. How are we going to fill a faculty big enough to run all the programs we're already committed to and the PhD program? So over the next few years, Bob helped us add 13 faculty to the program, some of them transferring in, many of them new, to eventually teach this PhD program. Well, along the way, this building that we're talking about runs into some issues. The earmark from El D'Amato raises $5.5 million for us, but the building's going to cost $8 or $9 million, and we need to raise some money. Well, the Institute decides to throw a little monkey wrench at us and say, we're not even going to break ground till every penny is in the bank. I don't think we've done this for any other building, but imaging science is now very highly visible. We're going to be the first PhD. They can't take any money out of the general revenues to help with that because they've told the Institute, it's not going to cost that much. All the other people are here, it's not going to cost that much. So we go out to try and raise another $3.5 million. That's $8 million in today's dollars. There's no faculty. How are we going to do this? I won't go into all the details of that, but we go out and we start the process of raising the money. There's a whole bunch of other issues that come up with this building. Jeff Pelz will tell you great stories about negotiating with the beautification committee to build a building that's not 100% brick. Brick City weekend, you can appreciate that. And then we had to redesign as all of these new faculties, 13 new faculty, everyone comes in, wants their own lab, wants it to look like this. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Jeff knows these stories better than I do. Well, we succeed. I guess we're $500,000 shy when we broke ground, but we had money, the money promised, so they let us break ground in '87. We throw a big party. Rodney Shaw has been drafted as the director by this time. That was one of Bob Desmond's big jobs, was to find us a longer-term director. Rodney would be with us for 5 years, and he loved parties. So we threw a big party at the dedication of the building. His characters from left to right are David Kearns, head of Xerox at the time, Doris Carlson, the wife of Chester, the building is named after, the developer of xerography. Way on the right is Thomas Plow, who's the provost. And people my age recognize that guy, Walter Cronkite, right? So, an impressive crew there at the dedication. Meanwhile, the PhD program proposal is moving forward. This was an unbelievable nightmare. We've got a committee made up of faculty from all across the Institute, some of whom knew a little bit about imaging, some of whom knew nothing, some of whom had been through a research program, some of them not, trying to put together this proposal for us, a PhD in imaging. We've got a faculty who think they know how to teach imaging because that's what they do for a living, and they're not on the committee. The committee had, I think, 2 people from imaging on it. So we went through a lot of back and forth for 3 years trying to design and build a proposal to offer a PhD in imaging science. And we went through every step of scrutiny you can imagine because it's the first one in the Institute and there's a whole bunch of people who don't want this to happen. So each step we would get all sorts of criticism, we rewrite the proposal, we take the next step. We write all sorts of criticism, write it again. So this went on for 3 years to write this proposal. Finally, in the fall of 1989, 30 years ago, October, we opened the building. You couldn't find a scrap of paper on the floor of that building for several years. We were so pleased with that building. Didn't even hit the ground, somebody would pick it up. Faculty, staff, student. So we opened the building in 1989 in October, just before Christmas. We hear back from the state. So we sent the proposal in almost a year earlier to the state. It's a long time for the state to sit on a proposal. Do you know there's a little college down the river from RIT? They weren't sure they wanted another doctoral program in Rochester. Anyways, a lot of lobbying going on in Albany that year, but finally, just before Christmas present for those of us who worked on it for so long, the state authorizes RIT to change its charter so they can offer a PhD and simultaneously approves the PhD program for imaging science. So here we are 30 years ago, everything is in shape. Here's some of the players, there's the dedication. I want to flag 2 of them. How did that $8 million in today's dollars come about? Rodney Shaw, Dana Marsh. Dana Marsh is one of the unsung heroes. He had lots of connections in Xerox. He worked for many years on the international side of Xerox. He helped travel, Rodney and some of the faculty traveled all over the world, literally all over the world, to raise that money. So these guys, in just a couple of years, raised this $3.5 million we needed from corporate sponsors. Bill Castle, bottom left there, and Debbie, through the Office of Government Affairs. They kept telling me that wasn't what they really were, but Government Affairs raised the money with the help of Senator El D'Amato to put the $5.5 million together. And we've got this building not only moving, but completely paid for. No loans, no debt. Here's another bundle of the faculty. I just put these in between the 2 of them. You've got most of the faculty and many of the staff who were playing the game in those days. 2 people missing from these 2 somehow. Jeff Pell snuck by, and Zoran Ninkov managed to not be in these 2 photos. Why are we doing all this? We often forget. I don't think any of the faculty forget, but when we tell these stories, we often forget. It's all about these young people that we're trying to get degrees so that they can go out and make a difference in this field that we're trying to define. And so here's just one of a few pictures I've got of students. This is Jeff Pells. He figured out that he was going to teach the first class in the new building. And he decides he's going to form the first class club. And so here's Jeff. Jeff's the little guy in the middle of that picture. With the vertical striped shirt. He's still the little guy in the middle of that picture. And his undergraduate class. 20 years later, here's a crew of high school students, undergraduates, graduates, and staff who'd been out all day taking data and are posed for this picture underneath that very modern aircraft. I couldn't give a talk like this without acknowledging a program that's been here at Imaging Science. Since 1960s, I think 65 is the actual start date. Since the 1960s, photo that Imaging Science has been educating U.S. Air Force officers in the dark blue and Canadian Air Force officers in the light blue to get their MS and doctoral degrees, and then go back to their organizations and do the imaging and photo reconnaissance that they need. And we're not just teaching them, they're going out and making a difference. And this is just a crew at one international scientific meeting where we put out a quick call and said, anybody from photoscience show up, was given a paper today. So this is current students, former students, any affiliate. So this little tiny program, very tiny program, makes a big difference in the scientific community. I'm going to start to wrap things up, and I need to acknowledge some very critical people. Before I do that, I have to say that I'm stopping now. It's 89, there's many years to come. Some of the center's greatest years and some of the center's most difficult years are still ahead of it. Buy the book and read the story. But I got to acknowledge the people whose vision really made this happen. As I mentioned, as early as 1980, Ron Francis is pitching a PhD to me. He wanted there to be a PhD program. Frankly, I think he just loved the students so much he wanted them to hang around longer. We had what we called in those days the 5-year program to get a BS and an MS. The students called it the N-year program. There were many of them here for a long time. Ron had the vision, he wanted a doctoral program. Russ Krause, who is not well known in the center, but Russ drafted me to do research. He wanted research. He understood if we were going to move to a PhD, we had to do research. He did a lot of work to help me with the senior administration, particularly Bill Dempsey, the VP of Finance, to put in place the tools that we needed in order to do serious research on campus. We would not have a center without Bill Brower. Crotchety, cranky, one of my favorite people on earth. It was his vision to have this national center and frankly to use the intelligence community's interest in him and interest in the center to pitch it to the senior administration. He knew that intelligence activities would only ever be a fraction of what we did, but it was the key to get the thing going. I seldom, maybe never, say nice things about administration. So I have to be careful here. Bob Desmond helped us through many critical steps. Again, not well known for the center. He was only there for a year, but in his role as dean and then as associate provost, he was very critical in making the fiscal moves with us that would move the center forward. Debbie I talked about for building, but Debbie has been a factor in the center throughout its lifetime, helping us when we needed to interact with the government and bring in significant programs to fund our research program. She's also been a good friend for years. Rich Rose made this all happen. He got behind the PhD, took him a little while. When he decided it was going to happen, he leaned on the deans. The deans were very powerful in his era. He inherited a university that was run by deans. They'd been there for 20 years each. He convinced the deans that this PhD was a good idea. Said, go convince your faculty. This is a good thing. It's going to work. He helped us raise the money. Very much the man behind, on the administration level, making this place work. Talked all the trustees into making it work. My story doesn't go this far because I don't have enough time, but Al Simone came in when the center was having some of its toughest times. And he could easily have said, we're going to shut this place down. Matter of fact, he did threaten to do it a couple of times. But he decided the place was worth saving, got behind it, and helped us get through the tough times and build the center into what it is today. One of the key people he used to do that was Ed Trusbilowitz. Brought Ed in when we were down and nearly out. And Ed, I think, was one of the finest managers I've ever worked with. And he helped us sort out the issues at the center and put it back on its feet. And I think Ed, again, is one of the very well-loved members of our history. I'm going to wrap up by saying thank you to just a couple of people. I hope some of you saw this book that's out there, because we're trying to get rid of them. But 3 people fronted money so that we could print the book. Dave, Sophia, and Ryan all stepped up. Dave said Dave did the work on this. He said I made one quick phone call, everybody said yes, we're in, so that we could fully print the book and make it available for everybody. Finally, I have to say thank you to somebody I think has gotten more hugs than me tonight.
No.
Pam fed us so many Christmas dinners over the years, hundreds at a time we would have for our Christmas parties. She would prepare it, fix the food, and make everybody happy. Countless Thanksgiving dinners, countless St. Patty's Day dinners. Harry Gross is in the back drooling just talking about it. Pam has helped me with so many things I'm not going to go into tonight, but I think all of us owe her a big thank you for all that food.
I think a lot of us take for granted that the center exists and that we continue to move forward every day. But it was a real struggle at times. And when you hear the stories about all the challenges everybody went through to create this thing within the sometimes fairly rigid administrative structure of a university, you can understand the dedication and the love that they had for the place. I've just got a couple of charts. I know some of you folks have not been back in a long time and maybe haven't interacted a lot with the center recently. So I just want to sort of give just a couple of pictures of where we're at now. So this is just sort of my one slide of who the center is right now. So the center currently consists of 19 tenured or tenure track faculty. That's a lot. That's a big department. And those faculty are pursuing research across the imaging chain in a wide range of areas. Additionally, we have a bunch of non-tenure track faculty, but most of those folks are research faculty. These are people that are 100% supported on grants and contracts to pay their own salary while they're here. And they apply to be a research professor for one reason and one reason only, because they want to advise students. There's no reason for them to do that. They could be a research scientist or a staff scientist or something like that, but they want to be thesis advisors for graduate students in imaging science. We've got 3 people down there who are emeritus faculty. Again, people I have to give an office to. We also have a large block of people on the research staff side. Some of these people have been with the center literally since its beginning, and you've seen some of their pictures in the slideshow that was going on. We have people everywhere from bachelor's degree all the way up to PhD level scientists. These people are experts in their field and internationally renowned. Again, they get job offers all the time, and they work at RIT in the center because they want to work with our students and continue to pursue the educational program. And of course, I can't go forward without thanking the staff that make things work on a daily basis, right? Our staff are unbelievably dedicated to the success of our students, and they do a great role in keeping the faculty in check too. So the center is a big place. And if you look at us sort of by research area, this is sort of roughly how it breaks down. The center still attacks a large area of problems related to all things imaging. There are some things that have fallen by the wayside over the years. We don't do printing anymore. We don't really do a lot of stuff in the medical imaging world anymore. That's difficult without access to a hospital. But there's a box down in the right-hand corner, which I want you to also see. We are still focused on hardware. Our students build things, they break things, they go out into the field, they collect real data. And that will always be a key component of the imaging science curriculum, because we know that those of you that are out there in industry and like to hire our students, you want them to be able to do things, not just to know things, right? So this is sort of how the current group breaks down. This is sort of my one chart overview of the center. One of the exciting and very challenging things as a director of the center is that I have 19 tenured faculty or tenure track lines, but I have 10 different academic disciplines among them. That means nobody agrees on anything. I think that's been true ever since the beginning of the center, right? But what it also means is that for our students, they get bombarded on a daily basis with a wide range of ways to think about problems and tools to attack those problems. Everywhere from faculty with PhDs in cognitive science to people with degrees in optics or engineering or computer science or physics. The undergraduate population is small, and we're trying to grow that. We are very actively working with the new Vice President for Admissions to grow our undergraduate population. The graduate population is strong. Thanks to the support of RIT, they provide first-year stipends to always bring us a nice big class of first-year PhD students, which means I currently have about 120 graduate students in the program. Of those 120, about 25 are in their first year. Of the remaining 95, about 75 or 80 are pursuing their PhD in imaging science right now. Think about that, right? When you guys started and you first proposed the program, what was that like, right? We have several people in the audience who are in the low single-digit numbers of PhDs from RIT, right? And now you currently, hopefully today you had the chance to walk the halls and interact with our over 90 PhD students that are pursuing imaging science research. That little bullet at the bottom is not me making something up. That's the number that gets reported to me from Career Services. Those of you that are looking to hire people, you should start now, right? We have a 100% placement rate at all levels. And our students are in incredibly high demand. And I know several of you were here today handing out business cards. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. One of the things we did several years ago, I don't know, Joe, 15 years ago, something like that? We started what's called the Freshman Imaging Project. We realized that our students were spending a little bit too much time in front of computers, and they weren't spending enough time in the lab building things and breaking things. And so we start with a combined freshman class of both imaging science and motion picture science in the College of Art and Design, and we give them a problem, and we say, okay, you have to build this thing from scratch. This is not a homework problem. I don't know the answer to it. I know how I might try to solve the problem, but it's up to you to figure it out. You have to figure out how to build this thing and make it work, and then put it on display at Imagine RIT and explain it to little kids about how it actually works. So these students go through the various phases of denial and terror, but they make it work. They learn how to ask questions. They learn how to solve those questions. We've done a lot of things. A couple years ago, we tried to build a video analytics system for the hockey team so that the freshmen could build a system that would cover the entire ice sheet so that the coach could track the players and actually do data analytics on them. It sort of worked. They bought 2 expensive cameras and realized that after about 5 minutes of hockey ice time, they filled up all their hard drives. It's a system engineering problem, right? You got to figure those things out. This year, we're having them work in an area that Roger Easton and I have been poking at lately, trying to continue the cultural heritage imaging work and understand how do I illuminate a medieval manuscript with ultraviolet light without hurting it, while at the same time try to get a very low signal to noise resolution image that I can actually extract information out of. They're getting there. They're at that point where they're starting to enter into the terror phase. But the center continues to be a leader at RIT in terms of scholarship. This is just some data that I pulled off the Web of Science. Over the last 3 calendar years, the center has published cumulatively amongst the faculty over 60 peer-reviewed publications per year. So that's about 3 per faculty member. That's top-notch, right? That places us amongst all R1 universities in the country. And we should be proud of that. And largely that's because of the great work that our students and faculty do. We also continue to support ourselves through external research, right? Over the last several years, we're averaging a little under $4.5 million in new awards. I'm happy to say that so far we're 1 quarter into this fiscal year and we're already at $2 million. Yes, Ryan, thank you. So the center is proving on a daily basis to be productive from a scholarly perspective, from a student perspective, and from a sustainability perspective in the sense that we can continue to make this research happen and grow this program. However, I do have one thing some of you heard about, and I hope you saw some of the literature tonight. Through the leadership of several faculty in the center, we have decided to establish a fellowship in honor of Willem Brouwer. Our goal is to get to an endowment such that the distribution from that endowment annually will perpetually fund a PhD student. We want to make sure that our students have stable funding and have the ability to pursue interdisciplinary research of their choice in collaboration with their faculty and other students. We're hoping to get to about $750,000 eventually, because that will produce enough money that we should be able to perpetually endow this PhD student. We're getting there. We just kicked it off. I know this is all brand new to you guys. We would greatly appreciate your support. Several people that have made very sizable donations are in the room tonight. Thank you very much for your support. We're currently at about $150,000 towards our goal. There are pledge cards and such here as well. If you would like to continue to donate, if you have any questions, please ask me or any one of the faculty members about it. But we're hopeful that we can get to the point where we can offer this scholarship to our best and brightest PhD students to ensure that they have the freedom to pursue the research that they would like to do. So that's pretty much it. We have a lot of people to thank. The staff in development and alumni relations have been absolutely awesome for us. Some of you have heard this story, but I think it was Roger and I sitting in my office a little over a year ago, and we saw the little gold medallion on my windowsill that highlighted the opening of the building. And Roger said, hey, that was in 1989. Hey, guess what? 2019 is the 30th anniversary. We should do something. Okay, let's do something. So we threw this challenge at Development and Alumni Relations. We decided to host it in conjunction with Brick City Weekend, and they have been absolutely fantastic in their support, including, I have to say, printing this booklet in extraordinarily large type so that I don't have to do the reading. I also have to thank all the staff in the Center for Imaging Science who have killed themselves over the last several months, not only to prepare the building for that awesome open house today, but for also just taking care of all the communications, all the logistics, all of the little things that have to happen. So thank you all to everybody that helped support this. That's it. That's you guys. This is the first run of the photo from the drone that was taken this afternoon of the couple of hundred alumni that were at the open house this morning. Thank you all very much for coming. This far exceeded our expectations. We continue to try and do these events to build the community of imaging science that you guys are. Right, and so we thank you very much for your coming. Please come back anytime you're in the Rochester area. Just poke your head in the building and say hi. Thank you all very much for coming.
So, you're in Rochester, right?
Yeah.